you can't do marketing without operations, and you can't do operations without good marketing. AI cannot replace humans. It just can't. Like, it can give you so many great ideas, but there is still that human element that is needed to take those ideas and turn them into realities that actually work. Have they grown a law firm before? Have they grown any business before? Make sure you know who you're dealing with so that you can make sure you're going after the right things.
You are listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. I'm your host, Tiffany Swedensky, and today we have Micki Love of CJ Advertising. And I was telling Micki, because this is her first time kind of getting to know me, but I've known her for a while. I've watched her from afar and all the things that she's done for personal injury law firms. Actually, we competed against each other down in New Orleans. I worked for Scott McNair for a little while. She works with Dudley DeBosier, both big firms down in that area. It's so competitive. And I'm just super happy to have Micki here on my show, and I'm going to turn it over to her to finish out the introduction.
Thanks, Tiffany. I'm so excited to be here. As she mentioned, I work at CJ Advertising. So all we do is personal injury firms. That's all I've ever really done. So I started in the PI space back in 1993, and all I've ever worked with is personal injury firms. I've spent a lot of my time on the operations side. And then in 2018, I moved over to the advertising side for PI firms and just really enjoy helping law firms grow and scale. And really, you can't do marketing without operations, and you can't do operations without good marketing. So it's so fun to live on both sides of the coin for these PI firms and then to watch them succeed. And P.S., I think Scott is just a great guy, and I know you've done a lot of great things for his advertising. So we're of the mindset that we're not competitors, that there's enough work to go around, and we're happy when there's good lawyers in the same market doing great things for other clients.
I find like a lot of the best marketers and businesses have that attitude, because if you look across the landscape and all you see is competition, it gets rather isolating. And there's so much you can learn from just what the other person is doing. And yeah, there is enough business for everyone. It's just the smaller firms tend to point fingers at the bigger firms and say they're taking it all. Well, my first question is maybe a little abstract, but what do you think's like the secret ingredient that takes a small firm from being like a big firm? And there might be many things, but what's like the missing piece?
Knowledge of your numbers. All of your numbers, right? If you're not dialed in and tuned into how many leads are we getting every day, how many of those leads turned into cases, and on the flip side of that, how much money do we have to spend, and are we spending it in the right places to make that next level of growth that we're looking for? If you're not tuned into those key pieces, you're not really going to hit those benchmarks that you're looking for.
I get asked this all the time, and I have my answer, but when a law firm comes to you and says, what are the KPIs we should be tracking? What do you tell them?
I have a laundry list of those that are super exciting. So first thing I'm always checking for is intake. I go right into what is my want percentage? What is my conversion percentage of the different case types? So it's not enough to just know your overall want and overall conversion. You really need to know that by case type, because every case type should have a different want and conversion percentage for your area of practice. So you've got to really watch out for that. And each state can vary a little bit as well. Like if you get into like Florida, where there's no mandatory insurance coverages, right? Like, and then in Louisiana, you got no pay, no play. Like there's some different things that can affect your want percentage of your total leads. And so you need to know your state, know your numbers, know what the industry norms are, but then really understand how those change based upon your jurisdiction. And then how do we make it better? Once we have those pieces, we can really start to rock and roll. But intake's where I start. And then on the operations side, I'm looking for how many demands did we mail? How many cases did we settle? What's our fees outstanding? What's our fees deposited? Our average time on desk, our average fee, and all of those things I'm trying to improve throughout the life of the firm, right? So however long we're working together, I'm really digging in to see how do we improve on all of those things.
Honestly, I struggle to explain this to law firms, but a lot of law firms that come to me, they already have dashboards. They've already talked to either a marketing agency or a consulting group that did a data cleanup of some kind. And I come on board and they're like, we already have the data. And then I come in and they're missing parts or they're missing key pieces. You know, I could list an example, just like, okay, you know, we see all our form fills, like what landing page did they fill the form out? Like, do we know that? Where is it stored? A lot of times something like that's missing. You know, how do you explain to attorneys, you may be getting a lot of data right now, but you you actually need to configure your systems to get more?
There's so much data out there that we can track, right? The important pieces are knowing which pieces of data move the needle. And so we're also in what I like to call the consulting era, where everybody's a consultant these days. And some of those consultants have never done the job that they're consulting for. So the first thing is vet your consultant, know who you're talking to. Have they done marketing before? Have they grown a law firm before? Have they grown any business before? Make sure you know who you're dealing with so that you can make sure you're going after the right things. There's a lot of great ones in our industry, but then there's also some that have just sprung up that have never worked in our space, right? Like they don't know that marketing for law firms is different than marketing for hamburgers, right? And you can make somebody desire a hamburger, but it's really hard to make somebody desire to be in a car wreck, right? Like nobody wants to do that. And so you've got to make sure you know who you're dealing with. You've got to make sure that you're looking at all the data and then be constantly curious. I tell lawyers this all the time. You need to be constantly curious. What else is out there? What else is happening? What else do I need to be tracking? And never, ever, ever fall into the trap of saying, we already do that. Because I guarantee you, every time I work with a firm, when they tell me, oh, we already do that, like there's a piece of the puzzle missing that they haven't even thought about yet. So the better answer is to say, hey, I'm curious. I think we do that, but can you take a look under the hood and make sure that we've got all the pieces checked off? I learned this the hard way when I was running Hughes and Coleman back in the early 90s, I guess early 2000s, I should say. I was there in the 90s, but in the early 2000s, I was really known for creating the first intake department in the country for personal injury firms back then. Like that was what I kind of built my legacy around, was intake departments. And then fast forward 15 years later, Lee Coleman was like, I think we need to have Chad Dudley come in and look and see if our intake is right. I was so offended. I was like, we already do all of that. Why do we need somebody to come in and look at our intake department? Like, this is my baby. Like, I got this. And sure enough, Chad came in, did an audit, and he found just one or two tweaks that we could make. But those one or two tweaks probably added another $500,000 to the bottom line for our firm. And if I had just continued to dig my heels in, I might have missed that opportunity for the law firm. So be careful. Don't ever fall into that trap. Learn from my mistake. Be better than Micki, and you'll do great. So
It's a real fine line to walk. I started as a marketing director, and one of the things the attorneys tell you as a marketing director is basically protect our interest. Make sure the vendor is doing a good job, make sure we're doing a good job here. And, that becomes kind of the identity of what a marketing director at most small firms is: manage the vendors, make sure this is running right. But, then when you get in that mindset, you become resistant. And all of a sudden, your attorney starts talking to a guy who can do something cool with Google Business. And it puts you in the position of saying, no, like that's not going to work. And maybe you don't exactly know, or rightfully. And it's such a fine line to walk, because there are so many new vendors in this space who come from other industries, and what worked for the other industry is not going to work in personal injury. They're so different. And so it's just such a, again, fine line to walk. And I think the attorneys don't really see it as readily as somebody who works in marketing and works in operations, but it's just such a difficult thing. You struck a nerve with me, like, honestly.
yeah. It's shiny object syndrome, right? Like they can get so sucked into these sales opportunities where they see someone at the conference, and what they don't realize is that that person is using one little thing to kind of taint their vision of what they're already doing, as opposed to having the full picture. And so it can get really dicey really quickly. And I think that's where law firm owners need to be constantly curious, but then point the person back to the individual who owns that process at your firm. Right? If it's a new AI tool, if it's a new marketing vendor, if it's a new anything, there should be someone at your firm who is helping you with that. And so you should point your vendor back to that person for a holistic conversation without jumping to conclusions. And never, ever, ever, and I say this from a vendor standpoint, never just assume the vendor knows everything about your marketing when they start to make a recommendation. That's one thing about CJ. Like, we're a boutique ad agency. We only represent a handful of clients across the country, but we always know the client before we make a recommendation, right? Like if someone reaches out to us, it's more of a, hey, we need to get to know you before we can give you information. And that sometimes drives owners crazy, because they just want us to come in and say, we have all the answers. We got all the shiny tools that'll fix all your problems. That's not true of any vendor, not us, not any other vendor that's out there. And so if you get into a conversation with a vendor and they're solving your problem before they get to know who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, they're not really solving your problem. They're solving their sales problem. And so you need to make sure whose interest do they have at their heart, right? Is it your interest or is it their own interest? And if there's not a mutual interest there where we're both going to win, you need to take pause as an owner and say, hey, let me get you over to somebody else to talk to first, and then we'll reconnect.
Law firm owners and marketers sometimes don't realize vendors will just say yes. Can you do this for us? Yes. Sometimes the tactic is wait a few days and say, well, actually, when they do some fact finding or discovery. I think like every person who's sitting in on sales meetings really should take some sales training themselves, learn what these people do for as salespeople, learn the tactics that they use. Because, I mean, in those sales meetings, I've seen it over and over and over again. And sometimes these are vendors who I actually really like and do a really good job, but the sales team is different than their operations team and who's actually executing. The vendor is just saying yes, yes, yes. And it's somebody like you who's also a vendor who has done some of these things, who has provided these services. You know, the answer is no. It's just so important to understand the sales process and like what the other side is doing or trying to do, because every vendor is trying to make money. Every vendor is trying to get you to say yes so they will say yes. It's just so important to understand that facet of it for sure.
And they're very good at marketing. Like this is what these salespeople are good at, right? Like they know how to sell you. So you've got to always think about, is this 100% the truth? When they do, you'll be at some conference and they'll be like, oh, well, we'll audit your GBP right now and tell you what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. And they don't tell you all the details. They don't tell you what words they use. Like they might use some obscure set of words that you're not even trying to rank for. Maybe you're not a nursing home lawyer in Baton Rouge. Maybe you're only a car wreck lawyer and they see that you show up really poorly for nursing home lawyer. And so they show you that GVP and you get all frustrated and you're like, I got all these reds all over my map. I should be green. They told me I should be this. Fact gather before you jump to assumptions that this vendor knows your firm. Like they may not know what you're going after. And I used two very distinct things there where I said auto accidents and nursing home. That's not usually the case, right? They're going to use some little variation of an auto accident word that your SEO company is not trying to rank you for, because that doesn't give you business. So you got to be sure that you know what you're being sold when you're being sold these things. So like I said, be constantly curious, ask the questions, let them do the audit, learn what you can learn, but don't assume that they know everything that they're talking about until you go back and talk to your team, right? Make sure you put the trust in your team, the people you've hired to take care of your business. Those are the people that you got to make sure you trust to carry out the plan or to understand what you're being sold. I could get on a soapbox about that for all day because I just think there can be so many dirty vendors out there, not the ones that are reputable. Like we all know those, we love those people, but there are ones that just pop up in our industry that don't know PI space and it's not good. So take your time, vet your vendors. I'm on a soapbox. I'm going to stop now so Tiffany can take back over this conversation.
But I'll be right up on that soapbox. Yeah, I will join you up there because I was at an event and I was in the back with two other marketers who have been in this industry for a while, who know legal marketing, who have done this stuff. All three of us were in the back. There was a vendor I'm guessing new to the space, making very wild claims from the stage. And us three marketers were in the back, like looking at each other like, they can't do that. That doesn't make sense. Like we were all so confused. And it's funny, like after their presentation, both me and this other marketer were like, we'll use your services because we have to know if this works. If it works, it's a game changer. And oddly enough, never heard back from that guy because he knew he was talking to marketers and not an attorney who'll just hand over $50,000 or something like that. It's rampant. And I think that's why networking, and that's why so many attorneys are on listservs or in masterminds, because it becomes like a way to vet kind of this new talent in the space. And you almost have to.
You got to be able to trust the people that are in your trust circle, right? I think masterminds, I've talked about this on a lot of podcasts, but if you're not in a mastermind, get in a mastermind. Pilma has some good ones out there. There's a lot of other great ones that are out there. Reach out to me if you need to know of the ones that are awesome. Happy to help you get into one, but get in one. Get in one today because that becomes your trust circle of people that you can talk to about these things. I totally agree with you on that. 100% agree about the vendors trying to sell things that are just not possible. It happens all the time. And our attorneys get angry at lead gen companies on social media because they make all of these wild claims, right? We'll get you a check in 24 hours. We got you $100,000 for this little scratch on your dent. And the attorneys get wildly angry about that. But what they miss is all these wild claims that these pop-up advertisers are making about how many cases they can get you. And they forget to get angry about that because those two are money drains out of these law firms that they're not even watching or considering. So you've just got to know who you're dealing with and you got to understand the data. I'm going to come off of this soapbox now so we can move on. But if anybody wants to talk about it more, feel free to reach out because I can soapbox with you all day. So
I recently became familiar with two logical fallacies, the gel man fallacy and the doorman fallacy. And the gel man fallacy is, and I guess Michael Crichton, the author of Jurassic Park, is the one who coined this, which is funny to me. He basically said, if you're an expert at what you do, you will read something written by other experts and just be able to immediately key in on where they went wrong. That's not right. That's not right. A lawyer reads something written by another lawyer. They're going to be very vocal about all the problems they found. But that same person will read a headline from a news article that's maybe half BS, or something like that, and take every word as the gospel truth because they read it on a website or they saw a vendor talk from the stage or they read a web article. Don't edit my stutter out. Leave that in there. People ought to know. And then the doorman fallacy is just basically assuming the doorman's job is just opening the door, but minimalizing all the million other things that they do that are extremely important. And I bring both of those up because it came up in a conversation about AI, where gentleman's fallacy is you, as a lawyer, you go to ChatGPT, ask it to make a legal argument, you immediately key in on all the problems, but you go to it and ask it for marketing advice, and you just accept it as this is correct, this is an innovative, super awesome tools, which dovetails into my question. What have you heard or what do you say to attorneys who are like, oh, I can use Claude as my marketing team? What do you say to them in that situation?
AI cannot replace humans. It just can't. It can give you so many great ideas, but there is still that human element that is needed to take those ideas and turn them into realities that actually work. I'm guilty as anybody of questioning Claude all the time. Tell me about this. How can I do that? What about this? It's not always right. That's the fun part of it and also the scary part of it because you can't take it for its word. Just like no lawyer in their right mind is going to draft a brief on AI and not read it and make sure that it's 100% right because it can make a wrong citation. It could do anything and they're going to question those things. You need to question everything. Question everything from your Claude agent. Question everything from your sales people that are out there selling you things. Be constantly curious and keep trying, but just know that it's not going to work. AI will not work without that human touch and interference to shape it and mold it to exactly what you need. I get it all the time.
Hear them. Yeah.
You can turn out thousands of pieces of creative with no money and in 3 minutes. And I'm like, okay, sure, but you've got 2 left hands and no nose on your face. It just isn't what they tell you that it is right off the bat. And it takes a human to understand the prompting so that you can generate really great AI products for a law firm.
I hate what it's done to marketing as a whole because, correct me if I'm wrong, but marketing is like super different than what it was 3 years ago. And it's kind of exciting. So, I mean, just to ask you a broad question, like what are you seeing like right now that you think, is Google still relevant? Are you pivoting your law firms to another channel? It's such an amorphous question, but what are you doing there?
Ooh, that's a big question, right? So I have legacy clients that have been in the marketing space for many, many years. They built their brand on TV and Yellow Pages. That's how far back our agency goes. We were started back in 1993. So we have clients that have been with us since 1993. They don't want to give up traditional TV, and I don't blame them because it's still a really important foundational piece for brand. However, if you're looking as a new advertiser, is the first place we're going to go traditional TV? Probably not. We're going to make sure we can be found in all the online, social, and Google assets. And then we're going to make sure that we have some digital and streaming TV that can retarget a lot of our visitors and things of that nature. So, gosh, such a broad question because every client has a different need based on their market and where they're at personally. But yeah, I think I love YouTube. I love YouTube a lot right now. I love the meta aspect a lot right now for different aspects of marketing. And then streaming TV is having some moments right now. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, and if any of my clients are watching, you're probably like, you told us a year ago streaming wasn't good. Well, yeah, because a year ago it wasn't. But here we are today. And the world is changing so fast that you really need to make sure you're with an agency who is constantly curious, because what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. And if it does, it may work differently than it did 3 months ago. So you just got to be asking questions constantly. How about you?
I got a lot there. I mean, marketing is constantly changing. And like one of the things, other than YouTube and Meta, which I'm fully with you on, is just the personal brand, the rise of the personal brand. And talking to these attorneys, not about like the law firm as a collective, but hey, your individual profiles and how you are represented online and how often you're quoted in publications, doing things like that, their personal social media profiles. And then also trying to develop non-commodity content. It's something I've been like racking my brain on for like the last couple weeks. I have like a list of like categories, case results. Biographies are a big one, case studies. I'm trying to remember what else is on my list. Research topics, things that are truly unique, and if you want to impress Google, but kind of what you said, like not everyone needs to impress Google. That's the truth of it. It's funny you mentioned about streaming TV because about 6 months ago, I discovered Prime has live channels. I don't know, they use like AI or automation, like they grouped it. So all of the shows that I like to watch have their own channels. There's a Star Trek channel. There's like a cartoon channel because I like to watch that. There's an Antiques Roadshow channel. And honestly, and maybe it's just because like I'm basically 40, I miss commercials, I guess. I don't know, but I like to go to Prime, put on a channel, binge Star Trek for a few hours while I'm cooking, and then it's spaced between commercials. And I just keep wondering, like, how many people are doing this? This is streaming. This is OTT ads. How many people are doing it? Because right now, all I see are prescription ads and then ads for big brands, but I know you can geo-target these. And so I've been wondering about the resurgence of like channels that we've kind of gave up on a few months ago. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. And, the targeting for those specific channels, like your profile, my profile is known to Google. Like they know who we are. They know what we're searching for. They know everything about us. As much as we want to think that we're not being tracked, we are totally tracked across all of our digital footprints. And the opportunity now to retarget you on your Star Trek channels with an ad that is Star Trek based, I can do that if I want to. I can totally do that. If you're a motorcycle rider and you're watching a motorcycle driven show, I can target you. I can target you with motorcycle commercials while you're watching Judge Judy because I know you have a motorcycle. I can do all of these things now. So it's a much different streaming environment than it was before. And there's so many other ways to stream commercials other than just a straight up commercial with a QR code. You got the L-shaped ads, you got the pause ads. There's just so many ways to do it, but have a plan because there are so many ways you can do it. Like, are you spending your money in the best places first? Don't be pitched by a streaming TV agency that's all they do, because they will show you shiny reports. They will make you think that they are the end all be all, that they have all the answers, and they've not even looked at your market or your brand yet to know what's really happening there. So make sure you know who you're working with so that you can ask the right questions, because it's the wild, wild west out there right now.
It's always the Wild West. And it's fun.
Lawyers have like this card where it says, take my money, because we just want cases. And they do, they want cases, and I want to get them cases, but I also like to do it at a good cost per case so that we have a great average fee so that we can do more advertising and build a healthy brand all the way around.
Sounds like you are too, but I'm blessed because like whenever I talk to law firms and I know what I do won't work for them, I just turn them away. But there are a lot of vendors who just they'll sign you no matter what. They'll sign you if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense. If you have an intake team, the vendor will sign you up for $20,000 a month in PPC, and your intake team is half receptionist, half paralegal. How is that going to work? It breaks my heart. It's not more obvious. It's always the wild, wild west. If you're working with people who will tell you like, hey, no, that's probably not a good idea. Here's why. That's probably maybe the only honest vendor you're working with, because everyone else will just tell you yes. They love hearing yes, but it's not always the best. And it's just unfortunate.
We chose to be like a fully serviced agency where we deal with the operations and the marketing piece. I think having come from the law firm world, both Chad and I could see the disconnect, right? Because they would hire different vendors and they would scream because it wasn't working. Well, if you really lifted up the hood of the firm, there was no intake department. Nobody was responsible. So it just wasn't going to work no matter what vendor they had. And so back when we started this in 2018, there was no full service ad agency that was looking at ops and marketing together. And now just about every ad agency is offering some level of that support for you, or you have consultants that were doing operations that now offer the marketing channels because there are so many vendors that they can team with that's paying them a commission to feed clients to them, right? So that's another thing you got to watch out for is that if you're getting a recommendation, is it because the people are using it and believe in it? Or is it because they can get paid a commission? If you go drop $50,000 over there, they're going to get a check from whoever you're spending dollars with. So many things out there today that wasn't there 3 years ago, and definitely not there 15 to 20 years ago, that we just have to be mindful of as owner operators and also as marketing directors for law firms.
I get that question really directly. Do you have a network of vendors who pay you? And I never set my company up that way. I don't know. It feels like honest and ethical. Like if I'm going to be a fractional CMO, like I'm going to stay agnostic. We're going to stay agnostic. You work with the vendors because the vendor might not outlive, but be at the company longer than me. Maybe they hire a full-time CMO and they're still working with the same web vendor. That would be great. Maybe we picked out a great web vendor. And so it's important for them to choose their own vendors. But you're right. There are a lot of, hey, let me hook you up with this guy. What's amazing to me, though, is how many attorneys just want me to do that or just want, somebody to do that. Just pick the vendor, just pick the company. And it's just like, well, you kind of got to do this on your own. Don't you tell your clients they need to make their own decisions too? That's kind of an interesting space.
Go heavy into vendors that I trust, right? Like if I'm recommending a vendor, it's because we've used them, we've tried them, or we trust them. If I don't know the vendor, I'm not ever going to talk negatively about them because I don't know their work, right? Like I just want to know that they can take care of my clients. Like if I'm going to hand you off to someone, or if my work's going to be dependent upon this next vendor doing something, I want to know that it's a vendor I can trust. So I'll lean heavily into those that have shown that they can do a great job for clients. But then ultimately it's the client's decision. Like who do you want to work with? Who do you feel most comfortable with? Because there are a lot of reputable vendors on all aspects of marketing, but sometimes you just don't personally mesh with certain clients. Them with us with them, right? So you got to make sure that you're completely open to all sides of that coin.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I got to close out with my last two questions, although I feel like I could keep asking you questions. What's one thing that we didn't talk about that you wanted to get into on the show?
Private equity and the PI space. And the private equity is coming in hot for law firms this right now. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking about, is my firm ready for private equity? Get with somebody who has dealt with it, right? Let us look at your numbers. Let us tell you what that looks like. But more importantly, how are you going to respond from a marketing perspective? How are you going to solidify your brand so that as marketing dollars are funneling in from PE companies that you don't get drowned out? That's what I want people to pay attention to. I think there's enough business for everyone, like we said at the beginning, right? So kind of tying it all back together, there's enough work for everyone. You just got to make sure that you can be found despite whatever PE dollars get flown into the market.
I have to admit, that's another thing that gets me excited because the bar is going up when it comes to digital marketing with all this money coming through. You really got to be on your game. And for somebody like us who kind of specialize in this kind of thing, it's an opportunity. Let me ask you, how do you want people to look you up, learn more about you?
Absolutely. Anybody that knows me knows that my cell phone is the best way to get in touch with me. You can find my cell phone number on CJAdvertising. It's out there for the world. I love talking all things operations and marketing for the PI space. So if you're out there, you have questions about private equity, you have questions about marketing or questions about operations, feel free to reach out to me. If I can't help you, I will find someone who can. So would love to connect. And Tiffany, I can't thank you enough for having me. It was great to spend time with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. We could do a whole 2-part episode on private equity. I have so many questions there, so I'm a little stupid. So yeah, it would help. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks everyone for listening. Please follow Micki wherever she's on social media and visit her website. And thanks again. Talk to you everyone soon.